but we really started thinking about homeschooling kind of during COVID. She was still little and my wife was pregnant with our second, but when everything shut down and talking to my older siblings and friends that had older kids of just kind of like how chaotic it was. And we knew a lot of people who were like, well, I don't want to do Zoom school. So I'm going to start homeschooling. And then, some of them were like, yeah, we did it through the rest of the year and then went back. Others were like, actually, we've really liked this. And it kind of worked for us. And so that was kind of always in the back of our mind.
Hello and welcome to the Thrive Communities podcast, a place where real homeschool families share their stories and the heart behind their decision to educate at home. At Thrive Communities, our mission is to support and connect homeschool families in a community where children and parents can truly thrive. Whether you are new to homeschooling, considering it, or have been on the journey for years, we're so glad you're here.
All right, Garrett, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I just want to get started and just find out a little bit more about your background in homeschooling and when you started homeschooling and how long it's been.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, would say our first true year of homeschooling. So it's my oldest daughter is 7, and she was one of the first people to start when you opened up the campus near our house here last year. But we really started thinking about homeschooling kind of during COVID. She was still little and my wife was pregnant with our second, but when everything shut down and talking to my older siblings and friends that had older kids of just kind of like how chaotic it was. And we knew a lot of people who were like, well, I don't want to do Zoom school. So I'm going to start homeschooling. And then, some of them were like, yeah, we did it through the rest of the year and then went back. Others were like, actually, we've really liked this. And it kind of worked for us. And so that was kind of always in the back of our mind. We first signed up for ESA last year when she was in kindergarten because she did an in-home, like a micro school for kindergarten because we wanted a half-day program. Pretty much there are no public schools near us that offer half-day kindergarten, and that we weren't really ready to let her go. And kind of the final decision for us was I sat down and kind of did the math, and this is really depressing. But if you look, like not counting like hanging out with their friends or like extracurricular activities or whatever, if the halfway point of how much time collectively you will spend with your child before they leave and like graduate from high school is Christmas break in first grade.
Oh man.
Like because it was with the public school nearest, it was like, well, the bus comes at 7:30. She wouldn't get home till 3:30. And then it's like, if she has, on Wednesday, like tonight, she has dance that starts at 4:30. It's like, that's basically, you lose a whole day every week. And so once you start chipping away at it, it's like, where's my time with my baby? Like you'll never get that back.
And it goes by so fast.
Yes. And ESA in Arizona makes it so easy to have, I guess, legally, it's not technically homeschooling, but home educating and kind of being in control and, having other options like Thrive. I don't know if we would have done it without Thrive, just because of the scale of those subjects, but that's probably another question.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like, I think in 2020, people started dabbling a little bit in what homeschooling could be just because of how much it had changed. And I think people were looking into homeschooling a little bit more, not necessarily jumping into it, but thinking about it. Mm-hmm. When you guys started like really thinking about homeschooling, what were some of your fears or doubts that maybe popped up while you were considering it?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that people always talk about, and you've probably experienced each other, that's like, well, what about the socialization? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Which I've realized like the best answer to that is like, well, what do you do in the summer with your kids?
Yeah.
And it's, because it's really no different. And it's,
right.
There's still, I think, homeschooling. Yes, it's that socialization looks very different, but I think the biggest fear that people have is it's like, my kid's not going to have friends. When really, if you think about it, over the course of someone's life, being in school, really elementary school and junior high, is the only time in their life that they will strictly socialize with people who are their exact same age.
So true.
And so, but having the free time and the flexibility, it's like my kid's like, she does a homeschool PE class at the gymnastics studio near our house. She does dance. She's in a homeschool choir. She takes art lessons. She does like these music theory lessons. So she's meeting so many different kids and has such like a very broad array of friends. And it's different than, what that might look like of being in a classroom with someone all day. But she still does have her, friends that Thrive and her people in her class. And I do appreciate that at Thrive. It's the age groups are a little bit broader where right. It's 2 or 3 years depending on the the class. And so she does have kind of a wider range of friends where it's not just, people who are at the exact same point of development socially, academically,
Right.
whatever, and that there is more of that crossing, because I do think that's more realistic of, what the rest of your life. It's kind of weird, right? You grow up in school and it's like your friends are all your age, but then you get your first job after you graduate and you're like, my best friend at work is older than my parents. Like,
Yeah, and you have to get along with
yes,
them.
it's like Bob is my guy now.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
Yeah. Were you at public school?
Yeah, so I was public
Yeah.
school like my whole life. If you would have asked me like in high school, I would have been like, heck no, I'm never going to do that to my kids. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of it kind of realized of the kids that I knew, like growing up, like the kids that I knew that I went to church with who were homeschooled, I kind of realized that it was like they were maybe homeschooling for different reasons. And so there's definitely, everyone has their reasons of why they choose to do it. And I think for us, the biggest thing was the flexibility, because like I do work from home and I work for a company where I only have a 4-day work week anyway. So like we want to be able to travel, want to be able to do things, don't
Yeah.
want to have to be like, oh, get out of town when we have to skip school, or like worry about like truancy or somebody, right? It's like, I want to go out of town every single weekend. And so being able to do that, but then also just the flexibility. And I kind of realized that just having the flexibility of you cannot teach to 30 kids at once. And like my wife's aunt was a kindergarten teacher, and she's like, I have 28 kids in my class and I have no 8 in kindergarten. And it's like I think a lot of I feel bad for teachers in public schools, because they're kind of like they're set up to fail, and it's
Yeah.
not their fault. They're trying their best, but I don't know how anyone could corral 30 kids when it's like you have some who are probably reading at like a 3rd grade level and others who barely know the alphabet, and you're trying to teach to all of them. I just don't know how that scales. And so that was for us as we were deciding where Thrive came in and was really key to that piece, because it's, covering history, science, art, and then, literature. Those are the things, especially history, science, and art, where there's a lot of prep work, and it's more broad of just like a group discussion. Like those are skills that I kind of described it. I was talking to a friend about this, that it's kind of like cooking, where it's like, it's a pain to like cook for 1 or 2 people. And it's like as much work as it is to cook for like your whole family.
Yeah.
Because you're already doing the same things. You just need to put like more stuff in at the start.
Yeah.
And so
Like that analogy.
doing those those make sense to have in the broader thing. Whereas like your kind of bedrock subjects of English, language arts, math, those I think can be hyper focused, right? And it's, we have the curriculums that we chose where it's, as a research inductive things, and it does kind of jive with Thrive that it's, we ended up going with everything through the Well-Trained Mind Press, which, Thrive uses Story of the World and is very similar like classical education. And so being able to do that, we're going to start, we found it's really working well for my daughter. My son's going to be in kindergarten this year. We're going to start with those same things, but having that flexibility, like if math with confidence doesn't work for him, there's a million other options, and we can find a way to explain it that like works for him. And I think that's something that was really important to us, was that even, I was thinking about this last night as, wondering like, what are you going to ask me today? So I had a mentor once, I served as religious missionary, and the mentor kind of who I served under and worked with, it was one of the things that he taught me, and I think about this a lot, was that even like any situation, every kid matters, everybody matters. And so even if the answer of what you need to do is going to be the same, like 99 times out of 100 or 800 times out of 1,000, every single person still is worth thinking about, like, do they need something different? And I think that's the same way. And that's where at large, the general education system can't really do that for your kids, because like I said, you're trying to teach 30 kids at once. You can't have Johnny and Sally doing one math curriculum and then teaching them while also trying, or Billy and Nancy need a different one. It just it
Yeah, a
doesn't
lot of
work.
kids get lost in that shuffle.
And they get lost in the shuffle, or it teaches it one way, but that way just doesn't work for their brains. Like it makes me so sad as, I'm a data scientist by trade. And so it's like, it makes me sad when people are like, I hate math, I can't do math, because I truly think that like everybody can. They just haven't had it explained to them in a way that clicks for them.
Or they were made to feel bad,
Or they were made
through
to feel bad.
testing and things like
Yes,
that.
and so being able to find the right curriculum for each of my kids, even though like we're going at the same starting point, but having that flexibility is like if they need something different, and being able to do that was something that was really important for us. And then being able to go at their speed, right? Like it's April, but my daughter already finished first grade math in like February,
Yeah,
or the
that's
end of February,
amazing.
beginning of March, because she picked it up and she knew things like, okay, well, this is a review lesson. You actually don't know it. Like it clicked for you yesterday, so we can we can move on and being able to do that and have that flexibility to go, because I also think it's more broadly right that you're not at the same grade level for every single thing. And that's kind of being able to, I mean, I think grade levels are a decent heuristic, right? Like it's like if your child by age should be in 5th grade and they're reading at a 1st grade level, like they're very behind, right?
Yeah.
But it's, I think it's totally reasonable that it's a 2nd grader maybe reading at 3rd grade, but doing 1st grade
Almost
math.
more of
And
a guide.
like plus or minus a level,
Yeah.
you can kind of go and get them caught up or get ahead and kind of do what you need to do and have that flexibility.
I have identical twins, so by DNA they're identical, and I can tell you that they learn at just different speeds. One's good at math, one's not as good at math, and so I think that's just speaks to how the public school system wouldn't really cater to their differences, and I think it would cause problems for them as siblings. And you having multiple kiddos, you know, I think it's so nice that they won't ever have to feel like wherever they're at is a bad thing or in competition with their, siblings. We kind of just put them where they need to be and what extra help they need and piecemeal it a little bit. So I think that's so true to think about it that way. So now that you're, in the homeschool world and you're leveraging Thrive, what does your typical homeschool day look like in relation with At Home and Thrive?
Yeah. So the Thrive days are would be like a normal school day, right? Because it's from 9 to 2, so it's a little bit shorter. I asked my daughter this morning, I dropped her off on my way here. It's like, I was like, I'm going to do this interview. I thought, what are your favorite things? She's like, well, I get to see my friends, but I don't have to go every day. And she's like, I used to, like, last year, she's like, I had to go to school every day last year, but now I only have to go 2 days a week, and it's shorter. So I like that. And
the honesty.
Yes. And she was like, I still get to my friends and do that stuff, but it's not every single day. But on the off days, so that's a lot of those days where I think where my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and I'm working full time, those are the days where like a lot of the housework can get done. And it's not a new concept, right? Like pretty much every homeschooler family has a co-op of some sort just for the sanity of it, right?
Yeah.
And you do need that prep time, even teachers, right? Like you need a prep period, and it's like, when are you going to do it? If you need that time where you can either focus on prepping things or doing that. But I think having Thrive where it's handling those subjects that are very prep intensive, in like that is a huge relief. And so those days are pretty normal, what would be like a normal school day. On the off days, there's usually some activity going on. So whether it's an art class or choir or PE that my daughter, like the kids go to, or dance or music theory, there's some class during the day. And so it's usually we are going to try to knock out school first thing. So you are shocked of when it's not trying to fill up the entire day and you're just doing English and math, of like how quickly you can do things. So for us, it ends up being where our curriculum that we use has kind of 4-day curriculums, that it's like Thrive 2 days a week, and then the other 2 days it's like 2 lessons a day. And so that's kind of the breakdown, but it ends up being that those 2 lessons take like 30 minutes, and that's it. Especially as you get in the older grades, I'm sure that will change, but for a first grader, right, it's all about the consistency, and a math lesson takes 10 or 15 minutes, and that's it. And so it's and usually for us, it's where the math curriculum that I choose is very game heavy, and so it's a lot of playing games to practice and hands-on. And so usually if a lesson drags on, it's because it's like, I don't want to stop playing. Can we play again? Can we play again? Can we play again? And so it's the like copy work, and that takes a long time, and it's really just like, hey, you can sit at the table, I'm gonna go fold the laundry, I'm gonna clean that, like I'm gonna do whatever I need to do, and you can leave when you're done. And that's and if it takes you 2 hours, then that's your fault. But the only thing stopping sitting between you and playing is finishing your copy work.
Yeah, I think it's so cool how homeschooling incorporates so much fun in learning. I think that gets lost a little bit in traditional schooling, where it's just like, come in and sit down and listen and learn because I'm smarter than you. I think the cool thing about homeschooling is we're learning together and we get to spend time together. Like you said, we're not missing out on all that time with our kids, and we're growing with them and learning with them. And I love that Thrive has that drop-off aspect of it, because the parents, homeschooling is is more work than
Yeah.
dropping off your kid at public school. So I think it's really cool that parents get some time back, like you said, to prep for that harder curriculum or do the laundry. I know I take advantage of that too, or do my Costco run without the kids. So it's really helpful that it is not a traditional co-op, but more of a drop-off program for parents. I know you're newer to homeschooling. It's only been about a year, but I remember my first year of homeschooling with my 3 was more challenging because I was trying to figure out the schedule and trying to make sure I was doing the right curriculum. What so far has been the challenging part of homeschooling for you in your new journey?
I think in terms of getting in the rhythm, like we've had some friends that have pulled their kids out of school and start homeschooling, and that transition is really hard for them because they, I think a lot of maybe your third grader might think like, oh, I just get to sit at home now and pajamas it. It's like, no, we still have to work. And so having where we kind of did it from the jump and that was kind of the expectation, I think made it a lot easier. So I think for me, the biggest challenge was understanding how to, like Michael Scott explain things like I'm 5 and it's because I'm talking to a 5-year-old, when we started, it's like I'm talking to a 6-year-old. And so which if you have an open and go curriculum, then that kind of spells out what it is. And so I think figuring out the time of like how to explain that, but also I think a lot of people are worried about that and worry about their own ability to do that, but nobody knows your child better than you. Like you were your child's, you're not a school teacher, but you are your child's first teacher, and you taught them how to walk. You taught them how to talk. You taught them how to hold a spoon. You taught them how to eat. Like you've taught your child everything that they know. And you are totally capable of doing that because you can understand what your child needs and where they're at. And so I think the biggest, kind of getting in that rhythm, which it didn't take that long. It was just kind of like, okay, we have to figure out how to do this. And I've never worked through it. And it's after a couple of weeks, kind of getting a rhythm of like, hey, we open and go, do this, like figuring out how I'm going to organize all the math manipulatives. That was like, honestly, a big thing. I was like, I feel like I'm getting so much stuff. And then I kind of figured out a system and it's like, okay, I got something to put everything in and this is how it's going to be organized. So literally we can just grab and go. And now it's like we do math in between dance lessons because it's like everything's in a bag, it's ready to go. We can just like hop in the car and take it with us. And then I think the biggest challenge though is just like worrying like, did I pick the right thing? Like, and it's especially a lot of people rightfully, I think they choose to homeschool because they want to offer their children what they perceive like a better education. So they think like, well, I need to be ahead of grade level. I need to be ahead and ahead. And so I think the worry of like, did I pick something else? Am I leaving any gaps and whatever? And I think it's, if you pick something that's working, then there's, and they are roughly on grade level, then it's like, you just have to put in the work and you just have to put in the time. And I think most curriculums are, they are complete. They are designed by professional curriculum designers. And if you go to like Rainbow Resource, that's where I end up. I don't know if you've ever purchased from them, but so they have literally every curriculum. So like there are thousands of options, but they have these like worksheets and it's like, what type of thing are you looking for? Like, do you want a family style? Do you want an individual? And it's like, they kind of narrow it down and they actually have free consultants that you can chat with on their website. Or you can email them or call them.
Oh, that's amazing.
And you're like, here's my child's learning style. Here's what we tried. It didn't really work. Like, what would you recommend? And they can like recommend a curriculum for you.
It's really cool.
And so, but I think if you get something that's widely accepted as like, yeah, this is solid, then your child's going to be fine. And if you're worried about it not being like hard enough, just go faster, right? Like that's the only difference between, well, this curriculum is set to go to algebra after 5th grade and this one's after 7th grade. It's like, okay, so if you just go a little bit faster every year, then it's like you can make up a year over between K through 5. You have 6 years to make up one extra year. That's like one extra lesson a week or whatever, over 5 years. That's not a huge deal. And so it's the only difference with being harder or more rigorous is just going faster, in which you can control that speed.
You sound like a senior homeschooling parent at this point. I think I've been able to speak to a lot of first year homeschool families through Thrive. And I think most of them are really scared and just really unsure. And it sounds like to me, you've done research and you were preparing for this. It seems like if you could say something to a first year homeschool parent who's just like, I am so worried about ruining my kids, what would you say to them?
Just simplify everything. Like I kind of mentioned earlier that the bedrock subjects you need to, like, as long as you are doing English and math, everything else is kind of secondary. And like, so I would focus on getting that. Well, one, I would enroll my child in Thrive, so that way they can have those other things taken care of and their life is easier. But outside of that, it's like, even if you don't have a co-op or whatever like that, it's just, if you're transitioning from school to homeschool, I would only do those 2 subjects for like a semester, because you have to figure out your rhythm of the day. You have to figure out like your confidence as a teacher, and like maybe you think you're probably nervous about doing it, but realize like you can do this, and then just get in those simple things, and then you can, add in history later, right? Like those are subjects like history and science. Those are things that you can kind of study your whole life. But if you can't read and your reading comprehension is poor, then history is kind of worthless. Like if you can't do math, then you're going to have a really hard time in science. So it's everything else kind of boils down to reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? Like that's why in the 1800s, we had a one-room schoolhouse. That's basically the only thing they taught, because that's what you need to survive as an adult. And so I would say just do those basic things first and figure out your rhythm for that. And then you can add on the, I don't say elective because you need to do them, but like the secondary, I guess we'll call them secondary subjects.
And you spoke to this earlier, how much time you get back with your kids and how much extra time you have to do some of those extra things anyway. And you think of the school systems and how much they actually do while they're there and gone for 8 hours. So I think as a homeschool parent too, we have to remember we get a lot more at bats with our kids. Yeah. And if they're struggling in one subject, we have way more bird to focus on it with them. So,
and if they're doing really well, then when you're done, you're done.
Yeah. Like you can move on and do something fun. Yeah. We had a bird that laid a nest in our door the other day, and it was a math day. And instead we moved into like the life cycle of a bird because we were able to see the eggs and stuff. So sometimes we'll just go off key and just learn something fun. I think the cool thing about that is my kids are excited to learn things. They love to read right now. And my husband's like, I hated reading growing up because it was forced upon me. And I think there's something to be said about going with your kids and them not being forced to do things. So I think that's really cool. So the homeschool world, I think, is growing. It's kind of blowing up, specifically in Arizona, because we talked about the scholarship. And then we have Florida as well, who has a similar scholarship. Mm-hmm. It's blowing up. So what that means is there's a ton of options now for homeschool families. It's kind of saturated. How did you hear about Thrive? And then why did you pick Thrive out of all the options you had?
I think I saw Thrive initially on someone talk about it on a Facebook group, like in one of the Arizona homeschool Facebook groups. And so I looked at it, and then what stuck out to me is that it was very clear in what the curriculum was. Like a lot of things are kind of vague of like, oh, like we will do science or whatever. And so as we were looking for something, so I had was keeping an eye on it, but there wasn't a campus close to us. And then I've figured, just because there are so many homeschoolers in the suburb we live in, that eventually you guys would come to us. And then I was like, the day that it opened, I signed up immediately, and then it ended up being awesome, and we loved it. And so it was knowing that the curriculum aligned with kind of where we chose. We wanted a classical education, and so knowing that the curriculum aligned with that and was from a reputable, what's considered like from a high level publisher was something that was really important to us. And not that there's anything wrong with just a co-op, but just like a parent doing things, but that's a lot of work on the parent. Like it can kind of ebb and flow of like how much time they had that week to prepare, and it's whatever. And maybe that's more of a social thing, but it's the reason we wanted homeschool is because we wanted the best education possible for our children. And so having that as an option, and then I really do see that there are, and then after we stuck with it and after seeing it, it's seeing that we do get, I feel like, the best version of every teacher, because they're all actual teachers, and they are like, they get to do the fun part. Like they just have to do the fun parts of their job. They basically don't have to deal with any like classroom management of like problem children. They don't have to deal, who are causing issues. They don't have to deal with the behavioral issues. They don't have to deal, I don't think their campus coordinator has had to deal with any parents, because we've talked to all the parents that everybody's great and they're very involved. The science teachers, like they get to do a science experiment every single day. And it's like, there's so many people where it's like people I know that are school teachers where it's like they're an elementary teacher. They love working with that age group, but then it's like you might have time in your class to do a science experiment like every other week, or an art project every other week, or, whatever. And so they get to do that every single day when they show up to work. So I feel like we're getting excited teachers who only have to do the best parts of their job. And so they come to work like super excited and super ready and doing it. And then while we stick with just the quality of education, I remember the very first day last year when my daughter was in kindergarten, because you guys opened the campus in like April. So it was like we started at the tail end of the year to make sure that we could have a spot going forward. And that the very first day I picked her up and we're like, what did you do today? Like, what did you talk about today? And like, she's like, oh, in history. So she was in kindergarten. She's like, in history, we talked about the battle for the Suez Canal and the Berlin Wall coming down. And in science, we learned about like the pH scale, and we made a volcano, and there's like acids and bases, and if you mix them together, then it's like they cancel each other out. And I was like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
You're in kindergarten.
Like, so impressive.
And that's kind of why I kind of really saw the magic of it, and just like with the whole approach to classical education, where there's like the trivium and being in the grammar stage of like their brains at that young age are just such sponges, and they just soak up every single fact possible, even if they don't really understand it. And then moving on to then reviewing it through the second cycle of like, hey, you remember this fact. Now let's talk about why that's important, whatever. But the things that she's coming home and learning and doing and seeing the art projects that she's doing every week and the science things that she's bringing home, like when they learned about friction, they made little hovercrafts with their CDs and all these things. And her asking me, I don't remember who it was. There was something in history that some person that I talked about, I'd literally never heard of him before. And she was like, what do you mean you didn't heard about them? I was like, we didn't do this in school, right? Like,
I didn't learn that.
We didn't learn this. And so it's the quality of the education is so high.
Yeah. Yeah. And the cool thing is I have multiple age levels at Thrive. Mm-hmm. So as all your kids start attending Thrive and they all learn the same things at different levels, you'll have some great dinner conversations around how each kid interpreted some of that information. It's really, really cute. My son has his view on what he's learned, and then I have my twin girls who have opposite views of how they thought of, the information. It's just really cool to see how their brain, takes in information like that, and they can verbalize it, what they've learned. So as you bring your kids in, you're going to have them all talking with you at the table about it. It's going to be really cool. So we talked a little bit about socialization and how people are like, oh, homeschoolers aren't socialized and things like that. What do you think Thrive is going to do for your kids with the socialization aspect? Yeah,
I think in general, most kids kind of most kids I think kind of reflect their parents and kind of like what their home life is. And so I think if we think about growing up and who homeschool, like maybe they homeschool because they were not very social people. And so that's why kind of that preconceived notion but it's now I think it's the ability to have friends. I think that's probably the biggest thing that my daughters complain about, especially is like she sees TV shows where it's, watching TV or movies, like every Disney Channel movie, original movie, it's like a kid who's in school and something's happening in school. And so she doesn't feel like she's missing out as much because she has her friends at school and she has class and she has lunch and they do have recess where she gets to play. And so kind of having all of those things, where I think that's probably now the bigger thing for homeschool is of kids maybe feeling like they're missing out on something.
Yeah.
And not really relating to those experiences that they see on TV or, some of the other kids in their neighborhood that they play with, where they don't kind of really, there maybe is that understanding gap just because it's not necessarily better or worse, but it's just different. And so I think being able to have that socialization there to make new friends in new places that you wouldn't see otherwise and is always a good thing, right? And I think the kids that she has met, and all of them are great. Like we're hosting, she wanted to have like a movie night, so she like printed out invitations, is like cute. Inviting all the girls, like her little girl squad from
so cute.
Over to our house, like watch a movie, and like because we have like a projector with a big screen, and so she's like wants to have everyone come over and do that. And so I think having those where you kind of get the extended time, whereas maybe like she has friends from choir or dance, but it's you're busy and you
regularly seeing some of
right,
these kids,
and it's having the recess time, because even if you think about socialization, like when you're in school, like how much time should you actually be socializing? Because right, you're supposed to be listening to your teacher, so you have like, I don't remember what was in school, it's like a 10-minute recess in the morning and like 20 minutes at lunch and 10 minutes in the afternoon or something like that was the 3 weeks. So you had like 40 minutes of free play time that you had at school during the school day. And so I think having that to kind of deepen those relationships, and really it's just enough to like getting to the point of, hey, mom, dad, can we invite so-and-so over to play? Or like, can I go to so-and-so's house? I think that's kind of having that little bit of extended time with those recesses, and where they are doing more hands-on stuff where they're maybe building something, but they do get to talk to each other because it is more side-by-side project work rather than, okay, listen to me while I'm explaining how to do long division. Kind of, I think it does lend itself to having more true socialization time than maybe a traditional classroom would.
That's so true. How I want to end our little conversation. Homeschooling is obviously the harder choice. It's the more, taxing choice for parents, but I think most families do homeschooling because they just love their kids so much. So what is your biggest hope for your child's future going into homeschooling and just spending so much time and thinking about all the things you can do for them?
Biggest hope. I want my kids to feel confident that they can go down any career path that they choose. And I think there's a lot of kids who maybe feel like they can't be a doctor because they didn't understand, in second grade, they struggled with math, and then they told themselves, I'm the kid that's not good at math. And that's, so I can't go be a doctor or be a veterinarian or be an astronaut, whatever. So I want my kids to feel comfortable in every subject. And I want my kids to be able to learn and teach themselves things. Because I think that, you have your schooling and then you have your education. And while you graduate from school, your education never ends.
I love that. Thank you so much.
If this episode encouraged you, share it with another family who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll see you next time.